Bobby Moore and Sir Jeff Hurst, with Trevor Brooking and Billy Bonds, and Paolo Di Canio, West Ham United. We celebrate our victories, we stick together in defeat. I'm proud of our history, West Ham United, more than just a podcast, more than just a podcast.
And we welcome to More Than Just a Podcast. We've got a special guest this week during the summer break. Now, you know I'm not very good with pronunciations, but I'm going to give it a go because it's a good friend of mine, Lew, and I'm going to try and pronounce your second name, which is Polish, Ozarow.
Yes. Oh,
Is that
that's
close?
probably a Polish pronunciation. It's Ozarow, English pronunciation.
Ozarow. See, I thought it was a Polish name. See how wrong I am.
It is a Polish name, and it's a village named after my ancestors, 1546, in Poland.
I went. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, Lew, depending where our listeners are at the moment and what time zone it is. But I got quite close. I did look at the internet and said, how do you spell? How do you pronounce Ozarow?
Yeah.
But yeah. Welcome, Lew. Welcome, Lew. We're good old friends, aren't we? We've known each other 5 years at least.
It must be at least 5 years. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome to More Than Just a Podcast. I know you're not a big technical guy, so we are ringing you on your telephone. So if apologies for the quality of, but we are ringing Lew on his mobile. So let's start at the beginning, Lew. Before I knew you, what made, with a Polish name, and obviously I don't think you were born in Poland that I can remember because you don't sound Polish at all. How did you become a West Ham fan?
Okay, let's go back. I had a great father who came out of the army 49, I think he left the army in Burma, from Burma campaign. And they moved from Bow, East London. He wasn't a football fan, but he was intrigued by West Ham, the closest team.
Yeah.
So he got off the train and then told all his mates, I couldn't believe the long walk I had from West Ham Station to Upton Park. He got off at the wrong station. That's me dad. He then had me, a son, 1950. And I became a football...
Giving your age away?
Yeah, sorry about that. I became a manic football fan, full stop. And Dad, although he didn't particularly have an interest in football, thought, I will go West Ham for my son. So, I started going to West Ham. Now, if I tell you, if you're going to ask me the question, how did I become a fan?
Yeah.
Because we do have a group session I'm introducing to Vintage Hammers called My Story, i.e. everyone's got a story. How did they get into West Ham?
Okay.
Now, my story is interesting. Dad worked in the West End as a retail greengrocer, so he wasn't ever available to take me. But we had a good friend, an Indian lad named Pat, and Pat used to take me. And if I tell you my first 3 games, that'll answer your question.
Yeah.
Why is this my...
You're 74 years young.
Yes. And why is this my 66th year supporting West Ham?
Wow.
And I'll tell you. First match I ever went to, home to the Cup winners, Aston Villa. We won 7-2. Musgrove scored a hat-trick. That was on the Saturday. 9 days later, we were home to league champions Wolves. We won 2-0. Third game, September the 8th, Bobby Moore's debut, Manchester United. And my dad got locked out of that game. When I got home, there was no mobile phones. I said, how'd you enjoy the game? He said, you're joking. He said, the police shut the gates and sent us all away. So Dad never got in. But that was my first 3 games.
Go on, name the year. Because if Nigel was here, he'd name the year straight away. But I'm...
1958.
Wow.
August.
10 years before I was born.
That was my first match. Yeah.
As an 8-year-old.
And as an 8-year-old, and my claim to fame is that I've been to Wembley, I think 5 or 6 times, and never seen West Ham lose. at Wembley.
Well done, well done. How you're a season ticket now holder?
I am, but Billy Bonds.
Billy Bonds.
Yeah.
How long have you been a season ticket holder?
Oh, on and off, probably most of the last 20 years.
Yeah. Well, I tell the story to my son, actually. He says, well,
Yeah.
what were you doing before the 2000s? And I said, well, you didn't need a season ticket. You know, when we used to go to the South Bank, like me, John, and Gary, we would turn up, right? Turn up with a fiver, 250 to begin with. You'd pay your cash on the turnstile and you get in. You didn't need a season ticket in those days, in the 80s. You just turned up and you could always get in. And you know what? They'd cram a few more in, wouldn't they? It will get a bit toasty in there.
Yeah,
you know,
and
never been turned away.
Even the touts were like only double the price. So everybody always got in, no matter what the match was. Tickets were always available.
Always pay the turnstile operator a few quid to get two people in at the same time, of course. So anyway, let's bring it a little bit more up to date. When we met, I think it was 2019, and a little bit of history lesson, and I'm sure we've told it before, but myself and Nigel were originally involved in the setting up of WISA, what was WISA, which was the West Ham United Independent Support Association, now a trust. Cut long story short, myself and Nigel were voted out. In came a new world order. At one point, I think the papers were saying it had been taken over by the loony left. But in comes Lew, and you took over as chairman, didn't you?
Yeah, and with my and to be fair, it had a shocking reputation. Yes, you've just hinted at it.
Yeah.
I came in.
Some of these people are my friends still. Yeah. You know, I sit next to Mark Walker, by the way, in the ground in the West Lower. So we're still good friends, despite our politics.
Okay. Well, the reality is, I came on the back of a job with ACAS. So I was fully conversant with rules, constitutions and everything else. And I came in basically with the deluded idea that as chairman, I could give it a much better reputation. Without going into names, certain elements within the group decided they didn't quite want that to happen. Yeah. And I think it's fair to say that one of the problems I encountered was that their opposition to someone like yourself being even a member. And I thought like crazy that you had the right as a West Ham fan to be a member. I think it's true to say it was felt that you had ties too close to the club, which going forward to current days, I think there's an advantage to a fan group having a tie to someone with the club. We'll talk about that later. But the reality is, in the end, it all got, you know, in life, you say to yourself, what do you put into something? And I was giving it 24/7. As membership secretary of WISA, I actually raised the membership because I was a recruitment professional from 2,000 to something like 6,000.
Yeah. You got in trouble for being friends with me, didn't you, in the end? I mean, we were accused of a coup, weren't we? A coup!
I set up fan groups all over the world. I think there were 22 fan groups that I'd set up, and I was moving towards a massive movement of West Ham independent fans. And yes, I decided reluctantly, the letter said with a heavy heart I resign, and decided that, you know, what I was putting in and what I was getting out didn't match.
Yeah, look, and I don't wish anyone ill. I think a lot of the individuals involved have left or are no longer on the committee, and there's a new committee. So, you know, I'd never speak ill of the West Ham Supporters Trust. Not that I know them anymore, but I know they're part of the West Ham Independent Supporters Committee. There's always, you know my history. I've been on the SAD Mark 1, the SAD Mark 2, the SAD Mark 3, the OSB, and then I resigned to Karen Brady and said this is a farce, and then obviously it became the IC, and now it's becoming, I'm sure you know, the FAB. So we've kept in touch a little bit, but I know you joined part of that IC was up to recently Any Old Irons. Tell us about Any Old Irons and what you did for them.
Well, I can't speak too highly of an organisation, Any Old Irons, founded by the foundation. I think this is its 10th anniversary.
Yeah. And what are they about? Some people won't know what Any Old Irons is. I mean, the name gives it away, but tell us.
Yeah, I'll tell you what it's about, and I'll tell you the problem. It's about, somewhere in its constitution, set up basically for people over 65. Sometimes it says over 60, but it's people of around that age group. Lonely West Ham fans meet as a group once a month. It started off at the London Stadium. East Ham Working Men's Club. It started up. That's right. Yeah. Then London Stadium, a few meetings with David Gold, bless him. When I joined, that was probably about 5-6 years ago. And it currently meets, the London group meets in the Boleyn. So about anywhere between 70 and 90 people. Membership's about 100. And it meets to talk, chat. Example, I met a guy there, Ray. We got chatting, and it turned out that very first game I mentioned, Aston Villa at home, 1958, August, that was his first game too. So Ray, who now lives about 2 miles from me, and I are great friends for that very reason. At the end of the day, we share stories. We have people come in and talk about West Ham. And occasionally we get players come in and talk to us about their careers. Yeah? Now, the problem, and it is one of 2 or 3 problems connected, is that it's limited because of the site to something like 100 members. Yeah? If they all turned up, it would be a squash. It was noted that, like me at the time, I was living at Shoebury Ness near Southend, that a lot of members were coming in from sort of Upminster, Benfleet, Southend, that way. So a guy called Steve Maynard, I'll give him a shout because he does fantastic work for the organisation. Steve approached me because I live locally to him in Leigh-on-Sea, and he said, I'm thinking of setting up a second group in Hadley. That's Hadley, Essex.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So Steve and I set to work at setting up Hadley, and that that had 35 members when it started, I'm guessing 3-4 years ago. The problem with both London and Hadley, and this is where we're coming to, is that they're both restricted to 35 and 105 members. Yeah?
Yeah.
So for the whole year last year, on the annual report, only 5 new members joined because there weren't any spaces. It's been in the pipeline, if we're moving on to Vintage Hammers, for nearly 2 years.
We will in a minute.
Okay,
before we go there, what role did you play in Any Old Irons? Were you just a member, or did you get it? And I know you'll probably roll up your sleeves and get involved somehow.
A highly active member. On my phone, even before anything else, I've got about 43 ex-players' phone numbers on my phone over the years, and with the member, chairman and so on. So occasionally I would help them bring a speaker in. But more to the point, I wrote newsletter articles. There were only 2 members of Any Old Irons who went to Prague for the European game. And I wrote a big article. And I wrote a big article about it. And also I was a speaker at one of the meetings about our experience in Prague. So, right. So finally, in May, the annual general meeting in April, I stood for election on, in inverted commas, a manifesto that said that I'm passionately of a view that this is such a great idea. I find it, what's the word? I find it disappointing that it's restricted to 100 members London and 35 Hadley. Yeah. And there was a campaign through Hervé, who's the foundation interlock between the club and Any Old Irons. He was firmly of a view that he wanted a Romford base. because that's halfway between Southend and home. So for 2 years now, we were debating it. I put it in my manifesto when I applied to join the committee. And unfortunately, I lost by about, I think, 5 votes. I was off joining the committee.
Yeah.
I got a phone call from Hervé, and he said, Foundation doesn't have the financial resource or people resource. The Any Old Irons committee are all saying they've got too much work on at the moment, and if you wanted Any Old Irons in Romford, yes, go set it up, but it will have to be independent of the foundation, and there's no money, and it would take you quite a bit of time to do it. Well, not for the first time in my life, I got undervalued.
Yeah.
I'd already been working on a plan B that said if I didn't get elected, I was going to go do it anyway.
Yeah.
We got a financial backer, and I'd clandestinely put together a committee of 5 very, very powerful people. And
do you include Nigel as one of those? He's on the committee.
I'll come to that in a
All right, okay.
I'll come to that in a minute. Yeah.
Before you move on to Vintage Hammers, one last question. You might not know the answer.
Yeah.
Any Old Irons stepped down from the ISC along with the bondholders. I know Don used to be on the OSB when I was on it, the official supporters board. Why did Any Old Irons decide not to be part of the IC anymore along with the bondholders? Do you know that, or was that after your time?
Well, I'll answer your question with 2 questions.
Go on.
Don was on the committee. Nobody ever knew what was happening on the committee. and when he resigned, the question in everyone's head, mine particularly, was, would it make any difference? Because I didn't even know that there was a representation there.
Yeah,
and
fair point.
Certainly,
nice guy,
but
not the most technology savvy person, I would say.
Okay, well let's move on. But any questions about that, I think better directed to Don. In fact, it'd be a good podcast to have him on about Any Old Irons.
If I could get him, if I could get him on. Anyway, let's move out. So Any Old Irons, you offered yourself, they turned you down. So let's move on to Vintage Hammers, which is why you're here today with your new
before
group.
Before we do that, because I want to make things very clear at this forum, at the end of the AGM, when one of my best friends, Mike Gapes, who was Ilford MP for 32 years, one of my best friends, who I used to drive all over the country to see West Ham away games, he was a teller, because I wanted to make sure, not wishing to sound Trumpish, but I wanted to make sure that the vote was a fair one. He put his thumb down when he came out, and I knew at the end of the AGM meeting that I hadn't been elected. So my first thought was, given what I said earlier, I asked for a meeting with the committee before the AGM meeting finished. I then went and saw the committee. And I told them that my plan was already well underway, that if I hadn't got elected, which I haven't, I will be setting up a Vintage Hammers. And here's the rub. Any Old Irons meets on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
It meets in an afternoon. It meets in Upton Park, and it meets in Hadley near Southend.
Mm-hmm.
I purposely set it up 6 to 9 p.m. in the evening.
Yeah.
For an older age group, because my feeling was, I've got a son of 42, and if I said to him, we've got such a player coming, he'd go, oh, Dad, I would love to come. I said, well, you can't. Any Old Irons, you've got to be over 60, 65. So my group is for anyone who's a genuine West Ham supporter and is brought by a member who is eligible, 60. But the age group actually starts around 35, 40, and it's lovely to see fathers and sons together. So what we've got is a different night, a night time, not an afternoon, an age group that's different in a location that is different, begging for members from Romford. Yeah. Now, I'll share with you a beef I've got at the moment. Certain members of the committee of Any Old Irons are accusing me of trying to bring the downfall of Any Old Irons, and that's very hurtful because I purposely have set it up completely away from any accusations like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just to be clear, if I need to come, Lew, you need to sign me in, right? I'm only 54 years young, right? So I've got another 4 years. So if I need to come, I need to be signed in by a grown-up, yeah?
No, there's no official age, but what there is it's preferable for me if a person wanting to join, it's a bit like a club, is signed in or brought along by someone who we know.
Fair enough.
So Nigel come along and brought you, fine, you know.
Yeah.
Also, I'd love you to come. I'd love you to come and give us a chat.
Yeah, what would you like me to? Nigel mentioned this because I know we're talking about Nigel in his talk. What would you like me to talk about, though?
Any subject you feel.
Well, the West Ham board or finances. I think they're my two specialist subjects. The West Ham board, 2010 to present day. As you know, I've got many a contact, and West Ham finances.
Yeah.
I don't know which one would send people more asleep.
Well, you could come twice. Nigel never sent them to sleep, so there you go.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You didn't listen to the podcast, but after he did his at your event, he came on the podcast, and Canning Town Len was there, and he said it was the longest 20 minutes of my life. and Canning Town said, yeah, for them too, mate.
Yeah, we got charged extra for the time we spent in the room, so thank you, Nigel.
Yeah.
He was good. He did the history of West Ham, and he brought some amazing documents with him. The original shareholder agreement and everything.
Real
amazing,
isn't he? Yeah. So tell us about the first meeting, because I think it's quite new. Tell us some of the what speakers you've had, etc. What I don't know how many meetings. Are you in 2 meetings in, 3 meetings in?
Yeah. Let's go back to where I left off. So I'd seen the committee. Yeah. I told them that, you know, this isn't like suddenly, oh dear, now let's start from scratch, no money, and it's going to take me months to set up, quote, Hervé and the foundation. That's what they told me. And that was an official phone call, yeah?
Yeah.
As I say, clandestinely, I'd already been working on the fact that from the day after my chat with the committee, the recruitment literature was done, the committee was in place, and everything was set to go. As a result, we decided 12 days later to hold our first meeting regardless. Yeah? So I'd already booked the location, which was very, very central and key to the age group, my age group anyway, and the club anyway, the Railway Hotel at Hornchurch. That's actually the pickup point for West Ham fans on away games. So it's well known in the area. It's very central because it's right next to Hornchurch District Line, and it's got a massive car park. So from my point of view, my mates, and I'll name them, Ray, John, Barry, Johnny Hostler, who works at West Ham, very, very instrumental in pushing me towards the railway, and it's a great venue. It can hold up to 100, 120 people. So at the moment, this is our third meeting coming up, and we're pushing 40 plus signed up members. That's not people who turn up on the night. That's people who've turned up and said they want to book for the year. So I've got 40 annual members already booked in. Because it's July, August, I expect numbers to stay around there, but I'm looking massively to push forward. So going back to the committee meeting, what had I done clandestinely?
Yeah.
Cheryl McRae, if you know that name.
Yeah.
Cheryl's on the supporters board as disabled. I meet her at the breakfast club I go to in Southend. She's on the board. Tony Hoskins, you must know that name.
I do.
Tony has set up the ex-West Ham Players Independent Association. Tony's been a good friend. I met him through Any Old Irons when he brought people to speak there. And with who he knows and the few I know, I think he knows 650 players. I know about 40. And I thought Tony would be massive. So I approached him and said, would he join me? He said yes, because we've become mates. and Tony's there on the board supplying players as or when I need them. Okay.
Yeah.
Cheryl's there with feedback from the supporters board. I got a phone call out of the blue after 5 years from Nigel, who said, "What you up to?" I told him, and within minutes he joined the board and
Well,
came
you did
and
ask
spoke.
me for. I'll tell you a real story, right, Lou? You asked me for his number because you'd lost his number, right?
Of course, yes.
And I gave you his number, and he went, "Who have you been giving my number out? I've got a strange number calling me." I went, "It's Lou." So he doesn't pick up calls. So you asked me for his number, and you called him, and he went, "You've been giving. I don't know who it is. They haven't said who they." I said, "It's Lou." He went, "All right," and then he rung you, didn't he?
That's it. Yeah, excellent. And within minutes, he joined as a member. He agreed to come and talk to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I say, great talk on history, and he's now on the committee.
Excellent. Loves a committee,
now,
does Nigel?
Well, this committee is powerful with those members, but the real coup for me, Kevin Locke.
I know Kevin.
Kevin Locke came and spoke to Any Old Irons about 6 weeks ago. I've never been so taken by the passion of a ex-player.
Yeah.
He was asked at the end, Q&A, he was asked a question, "What's your biggest disappointment in football?" And I could not believe his answer, which drove me towards him. His answer was, "I played in Wembley in the 1975 Cup final for West Ham against Bobby Moore." And he looked around the audience and he said, "You guys probably admired that fact that I did that." And everyone nodded, yeah. He looked and he said, "I admire the fact of what you did. You was in the audience watching the game. And I'm so disappointed I was not able to support my team from the terraces." And I thought, God, I don't believe this guy. Super fan. So before he played for West Ham and since, he's got season tickets at West Ham. Yeah. I then contacted Kevin, told him what I was up to with Vintage Hammers, invited him to be a member, and then pushed me luck a bit and said, "How do you fancy coming on the committee?" Yes, he said. And so he's on the committee, but more to the point is my recruitment poster boy. Because you can appreciate, with some trepidation, I started putting posters around. We got this brand new thing we're starting in May. But the May meeting started. That was the first one. We had Patsy Holland came and spoke to us, and that was a great meeting. Turned out Patsy's only 13 days older than me, so we had quite a bit in common. And then the second meeting, even better than the first one, Tony Carr came and Kevin Locke himself. I interviewed Kevin. And
I'm told you, Nigel said this, you're a great interviewer. He was very impressed with your interviewing skills. Well,
probably people didn't realise I ran my own recruitment company for 40 years. I was a headhunter, and I had an exclusive contract with job centres in Essex for helping them place people that were difficult to place. So I was a recruitment professional.
Yeah, so public speaking comes second nature as a recruiter, yeah?
Yeah, and interviewing. Certainly, I caught Kevin out when I asked him what the name of his cub group was that he was a member, and I had to tell him. That was fun. And which hairdresser did he go to in Barking Road? So we had a real good old chat about that. And Tony Carr was quite interesting because it turned out that me and him lived about 100 yards away in 1950 something.
Yeah, I met Tony
in Bow Road
a long time ago, and
amazing guy.
All ended a little bit sour. Poor old Tony. I think he was sort of pushed out, kind of thing. Yeah. But I'm sure he told that story.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to.
He's
I
quite
got to
political.
The guts of it.
He won't. He's quite a gentleman, so he won't completely throw people under the bus. But I think most of us know the story with Tony.
Yeah. But the one I've missed out, and is very important, before I'd done what I'd done with Vintage Hammers, I'd had a connection and did a lot of fundraising for cancer down in Southend. And when I moved now where I live near Romford, Oak Hill, I teamed up again with Tracy Tombides, DT38.
Oh, yes, I did hear about this.
Yeah, my first venture was the Dagenham and Redbridge game in May, where we had 2,000 fans. That was the first one. I was standing on the street corners at Stratford Place giving out leaflets about the game. And, we pushed it up. Big shout out to Ian Morgan, who did a hell of a job organising that day and raising the money for DT38. I then had 3 subsequent meetings with Tracy and told her about what was happening with Any Old Irons. As regards, I was going to try and get on the committee. If I didn't, I was going to set up a Vintage Hammers group. And could we support them as our main charity? She loved the idea, and I've sort of been appointed officially with her, coming up with events. So just to give it a plug,
nice.
On Tuesday we were down in Southend organising a month of September a cyclethon where people can go and take their cycles or hire cycles for free on the athletics tracks at Garrons in Southend, and we're going to raise money that way. We're also organising through Southend United, that I've got a connection, a walk-in football tournament for ex-players of West Ham, Southend, hopefully Ipswich, Cambridge, Colchester. So we're organising that for next year for DT38. And we're looking at boxing tournaments at the York Hall. So I've got 3 major projects that I've
You're
set
not
up
slowing
with Tracy.
down at 74 years old, Lou. And I know you've had your health problems in the past as well. You're just followed, aren't you? I'd like to be as busy as you are at 74.
Well, there you go. Long as I've got a breath in my body, I will do things to help people.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, eh?
Absolutely. So, we've now got our 3rd meeting coming up, which is 7th of August.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the flyer here.
2 great speakers, Jeff Pike and Brian Deere. Now, I've already made the decision. He doesn't know yet, but I'm going to interview Jeff and just let Brian speak, because Brian is a great communicator, speaker, and we've only got 3 hours, so I'm just going to let him go and see what happens.
Yeah, well, I've interviewed Jeff Pike. I contacted Jeff Pike for this podcast a long time ago, probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, when he was working for the FA. But I haven't spoken to him since. Brian Deere, I don't know. Yeah. I've seen him at the club. I think he does role, doesn't he? Ambassador role, but never had the pleasure of interviewing him.
Yeah, ironically, and this is a connection, Brian is an ambassador for both West Ham and Southend United. Okay?
Oh, is he? Yeah.
And ironically, I said I'd lived nearly 20 years in Shoebury Ness, and I bumped into him because he actually lived in the road next to me in Thorpe Bay. So Brian is an amazing guy. I went to his 80th birthday celebration. He's 80 this year. Wow. And he does a hell of a lot of charity work, does a lot of fundraising, and I was involved with him in raising money. I'll tell you a very quick story about, it'd be 2 seasons ago now, when Southend were a little bit more stable than currently they are now, thank goodness. But there wasn't a fun day this season, pre-season coming up. But 2 years ago, I was granted a table to raise money for the cancer screening machine for Southend Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 2 or 3 ladies, volunteers from Southend Hospital with me, very keen sales ladies. And we made a point that a lot of Southend United supporters are also West Ham supporters. And Mark Phillips, a name you probably know, who ran the academy, gave me about 30 sets of kids' kits, West Ham kits, and we sold them off on the stand about a third of the price. Nice. I think we raised about £1,000 on the day from the table. But during the day, and I'll tell you this funny story, the girls were approaching anybody middle-aged who looked like they might have grandkids and they might be West Ham fans. So this guy come up to the stand, he had a cap on over his head and he had sunglasses on over his face. So all you could see was glasses and a cap. And Helen, one of the girls, ran up to him and said, "Hey, I bet you've got a grandson who supports West Ham." He went, "Grandson who supports West Ham?" He said, "I used to play for him." So my ears pricked up. I ran over and said, "Oh, sir, so what might your name be?" And at that, he took his cap and his glasses off, and he said, "Lew, it's Brian, you silly sod." And Brian Deere stayed on the stand, signing autographs and having selfies, and helped us raise money.
Nice. That's a nice little touch.
That's all you need to know. All you need to know about Brian Deere. What a fantastic guy.
I'm reading your flyer, right, Lew?
Yep.
And so I want to question. So it just to repeat, Vintage Hammers, 7th of August, 2024, Railway Hotel, Station Road, Hornchurch, RM12 6 SB, 5:30 for a 6 p.m. start. Meet West Ham legends, it says. Then it says Jeff Pike and Brian Deere, you've just said. Meet historians and authors. Is one of those, Nigel? Football-related trips. Raffles and draws with West Ham prizes, 60s and 70s quizzes, browse through archive material, 10,000 photos, 100 autographs. Future guests include Martin Allen, Kenny Brown, Johnny, I can't read that.
Johnny Eris.
And Steve Lomas. £5 entry on the door. Yeah. So tell us about all these others. What the raffles and the archives and the photos and the what other fun do you have in store with everyone?
Well, a name you might know, Tim Crane.
Yes, of course. I get his emails every month from Tim Crane.
Okay. Well, going back to me 66 years as a Hammers fan, from about 12 years old onwards, I've collected stuff on West Ham, and as a result I've got now 49 folders, thick folders of every subject under the sun. So at each meeting I took the Bobby Moore. I've probably got about 700 photos of Bobby play for people to look at. Also, no names, no patriot. When I was in Prague, I managed to find out which hotel the West Ham team were staying in. And me and my son turned up outside. If I tell you, there were 19 security guards and 2 fans. The 2 fans were me and my son. And there was a couple from Colombia who reckoned they knew Pablo Fornals. Although when they waved at him, he ignored them. So I'm not sure how well they knew him. But I took the only photos in existence of the West Ham players getting on the coach to the game and when the coach pulled off. And I was offered a lot of money by a certain national newspaper, and I thought I'd rather keep the photos as exclusive for the fan group I had in my head, be it in the Old Irons or any other one. So they were all out on display, photos never seen by West Ham fans, for any fans at large. I say there's 49 different folders, history of West Ham, European games, 1960s European games, of which I want all the games. There's 49 different photos. Tim Crane spent 4 hours taking photos, and I bring one along to every meeting. So that's that. Like an archive.
How about the quizzes? Is it one that Nigel can answer?
Well, sure, but to tie that in with historians, the second meeting we had Brian Belton came along, who written books on West Ham.
I've read some
Brian
of his
did
books.
Quiz.
Yeah. So you're breaking up a little bit, Lew. I don't know whether your signal is slightly degrading, but it's slightly going. Repeat that again. You said Brian Belton.
Yeah, Brian Belton did a quiz. Very difficult questions, but a guy did win. And the sort of things that we raffle. Tracy brought along to the first meeting a signed Ward Prowse shirt.
Nice.
We've got numerous balls signed with autographs that we raffle away. I'm about to introduce an idea at the next meeting that a lot of these fans over 60 probably can't afford to go to games, and that maybe £5 a ticket, raffle ticket, if we get 10 people, we can probably raffle a match day ticket.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to bounce that idea off everyone. Yeah,
I know Hammers for Work and the foundation allow people to donate them. So if you could also offer people. I know one thing you might want to consider, Lew. Lots of people, and this includes Nigel actually, that often don't want to go to the games and don't want to put them on Ticket Exchange, but would be happy to donate them. And you can download the ticket, obviously, as an email attachment. So you might want to put that out to your members and other people. Say, do you want to, donate it to someone in their aging years that maybe can't afford to go to as many games as some of us. That's exactly my idea. Yeah.
As is the fact that I've put the ticket price at £5 to come into Vintage Hammers. There's other commercial groups that charge £20-30 to see players talk. I think £5 is very reasonable. And even better than that, I've got special offers on at the moment for founder members to get us started. £15 annual membership. So, like, for example, a guy turned up the second week. He'd paid £5 the first week, and he was going to pay £5 the second week. I said to him, well, if you pay 10 quid instead of 5, you've now paid 15 in total, and you're an annual member. What do you think? Bit my hand off. So we've now got 40 signed up. Annual membership, 15. But we do rely a lot on the raffles. On the back page of the application form, there's loads of boxes to tick of things that they would want to do. And the one that's coming up quite a lot is a tour of London Stadium, a tour of the National Football Museum, and so on. So
do you know
Brian Deere does them.
Stadium? Because I do know the chap who runs that, because it's run by Delaware North, do you?
Yes, yeah. But also Brian Deere does.
He does, doesn't he?
Tours of it.
He does.
So I was going to talk to Brian. Well, I'm going to talk to Brian when he comes.
He's a Spurs fan, not Brian, but the chap who runs it.
Okay. Yeah, but obviously, if we can get a group together and go as a Vintage Hammers group, that would be good.
Yeah.
I'm also looking at we're a non-profit social group. Yes, and one person I forgot to mention is Phil Stringfellow, if you know that name.
It rings a bell, but I can't think who he is. Tell me.
Well, when I set up Vintage Hammers, an outfit I never heard of called Old School Hammers, and I thought, Christ, they sound like us. So I phoned Phil up. He's based in Southend, ironically. 20 years I've been down there. I'd never met him. And we've now met up. We've had 2 or 3 meetings. He came along to my second meeting and gave a 5 to 10 minute talk about what he does. He sits on the supporters board representing old people, like 60 plus group. So I gave him carte blanche to talk to the group, and some signed up. So although we're not represented on supporters board and we're not political, we're a social group, we do have now a connection with him as well. So
that's one of my questions, Lew. Do you see, this new fan advisory board is being created, and they're looking for someone to represent over 60s? Is that something? You said you're not political. It's a social club. That doesn't interest you. That's what Any Old Irons is it? You're trying to do something different.
Well, as you said, Any Old Irons seem to have withdrawn from something we never realised we were members of in the first place.
But they're creating a new thing. They're creating a new one called the Fan Advisory Board, which is part of the Premier League strategy, fan strategy.
Yeah, we're touching a nerve here, aren't we? Because if it's going to be independent, which is what Vintage Hammers is, and what Phil's Old School Hammers are, then that's one thing. But I got an impression that they would be hand-picked people and groups.
It does seem more of a club construct, which, to be fair, the SAB was, the OSB was, and maybe the ISC wasn't. And it does seem, when you read the terms of reference, which I have, it does seem to be created just for Any Old Irons, bondholders, the trust, Hammers United, potentially, the disabled, the Pride of Irons, inclusive. So I don't think any other group could get in, because you've got to be going 18 months, have democratic elections, etc. So the cynical part in me says this is another club construct.
As I said, we've got Cheryl McRae and we've got Phil Stringfellow, who can tell us what goes on there.
Yeah.
I would hope any fan group. To me, the strength of fan group is all the Premier League clubs clubbing together, and if the 20 league clubs fan groups approached the Premier League and said we want this or we don't want that. Obviously a big contentious point at the moment, and I'm very much affected by this. 66 years as a fan, and they're telling me I've got to pay full price for a ticket. Well, have they seen the state of the economy? Have they seen the pension situation? And I'm very regretful that I'm being treated like this, if that's what they're doing.
Although I'm seen as a
with poor grandson.
Yeah. So you're breaking up a little bit again, Lou.
It's just, I don't know. Tell me.
The concessions, I'm very much against it. My son turns 18 this year, and I asked to make sure that we could stay in ban free, and the answer is yes, we can, as long as he's continuous. He'll get the under 21s until he's an adult. I'm not 66 for another 10 years, but will I be able to stay in ban free? We've since been told we get 25% discount, not the 50%. Look, and I'm probably in a better position than most of saying, I've done well in my career, etc. And I know you've done quite well in your career, but you still want concessions. If you've earned it, you've worked all your life, you've paid tax. It's time that maybe
when you loyally stuck with a team, I think it's 3 relegations I've suffered. I remember being at Wigan on the day we got relegated and Avron Grant got sacked. But when you've been through all that, it's a bit like a marriage where the partner walks away from you,
What band are you in then, Lou? Are you right in the...
I think I'm band 1.
Oh, you're in band 1. You're right on the halfway line, are you?
That's it, Billy Bonds. Yeah, I mean, being a qualified coach, I love to see the build-up of the game, and I like sitting down now at 74 because all the others seem to be standing up a lot. I used to be Bobby Moore behind the goal at Upton Park, and I was standing up then, but I couldn't do that now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I still stand up. I'm in the we was Chav corner, and I'm now in that West End corner next to the away fans, but I never want to sit down. Well, there might come an age, right, where I need to sit down. I know Nigel prefers to.
Being the eternal optimist that I am, I'm quite convinced by the time next season kicks off, this would have been resolved to the satisfaction. Because at the moment, I think you're not sure.
Well, I think the problem is, right, and I'm not an apologist for the board, and please don't shout me down, including everyone listening, but I think the issue is they recognise they sold the tickets too cheap when we moved to the London Stadium. If we want to compete with Spurs, and I particularly say Spurs because Spurs haven't won anything, they haven't got Champions League at the moment, but when you look at their ticket revenue in a similar sized stadium, they're earning 3 times as much as we do. Right? They haven't got Champions League. They haven't won a trophy like we have, and yet they can charge 3 times as much. They can take money for, and they always sell out. They're taking money for season tickets are expensive. They're doing away with concessions. They're charging tourists. And the sad thing is, right? If we want to compete, we don't like this. This is one of the elephant in the room. If we want to compete, with the likes of Spurs in the future, we've got to be maximising money. Look, everybody earns 100 million from the Premier League TV money. It's what you earn in sponsorship, what you earn in catering, what you earn from ticket revenue to make the difference. Because that extra 20 million can make the difference for another player and competing and getting 6th place, 5th place progression. So I know it's a dirty word, but if my criticism of the club is stop using the word affordable football. It's laughable. It was what you did to fill the stadium when you didn't know if you could fill it. But stop using the family affordable football. If you want to be like Spurs from a revenue point of view, and I've every admiration for Daniel Levy as a businessman. People have to pay more money, and that means legacy fans will get squeezed out. And I don't think that's right. And I regard myself as a legacy fan, but it's the way of they would rather sell it to a tourist who will pay £100 for a ticket, who will go in the club shop and spend money, who will spend money in the bars and the food and the local economy. You know, a tourist coming to London, going to West Ham game, is worth more to London and West Ham than a legacy fan like us will ever be worth, Lou. And that's the sad truth of it. We're both businessmen. We know how business works. So how do you balance that legacy and loyalty, you know, to your legacy fans with wanting to achieve and keep up with the Joneses by trying to maximize revenue? And, you know, as business people, we want to maximize revenue everywhere, don't we?
Okay. So for example, if you wanted to buy a one-off ticket for my seat, forget the concession. I think it's about £85 for the game. Yeah.
Well, it won't be. It will be. I'll just tell you because it's just come out for Aston Villa, the first game. Band one. Is and I'll have to look at this. I think it's like 90 something quid. Let me just have a look at this to check. It's gone up.
Okay. I'm only going to use rough figures as a guide. In my book, poor old fan who's been 66 years supporting you and a pensioner on very restricted income, he might get charged 50 quid for his ticket. But the old concessionaire at the Park Lane Hilton, who gets an approach from his Singapore diplomat who says, any chance getting me a ticket for London Stadium, Aston Villa? He goes, yes, mate, 200 quid, how's that? Yeah, fine, that's great. So for me, there's a lot of money floating about at the top end that they could use to make the same money that you're quite rightly pointing to, so that could subsidise the bottom end.
You're right, by the way. 85 quid this season for the Aston Villa game, which has been classed as a category A. It's 85 quid for your seat, 95 for 1966, and 1966 where West is 105 quid. And of course, corporate seats, like you've mentioned, are a lot more. But you see, there's a big problem all round because let's forget the money side. It's the fact that we're now called customers and not supporters, because there was no mention when we moved of a family stand. So, for example, now, if we want to take one of my 4 grandchildren, we have to give up our season ticket seats, which apparently causes a problem with the club of why aren't you using your seats? And we have to buy 3 separate seats for me, my son, and a grandson. And what happens if you want to take two grandkids and so on? And I think it's very short-sighted as the future of West Ham. I agree.
It's been brought up on generations. There was a point where 3 generations of my dad, me, and my son, now my son, me, and his son, and so on. And where's that continuity going to finish if they pursue it?
Yeah. And they see, by the way, in their view, and I've spoken to senior people at West Ham, they see the upper tier as being a big family stand. That's very convenient for them because they know they can sell the bottom seats, including where I sit. I don't want to sit in the upper seats. As Nigel has often said on this podcast, basically every upper seat, including where he sits, is outside the old Berlin footprint, you know, the old Upton Park Stadium. You're sitting in the flat somewhere. But anyway, we could talk about this all night, Lou. We're coming up. We're coming up to the hour mark, so I do want you to get your plug in, your last plug. If there's people over 60 or under 60 that want to come to the next event, what do they need to do? Have you got a website? You got an email, or did people just turn up? A bit like the old days, turn up on the door with a £5.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's just get the membership thing right. Anybody who's well behaved, and I'll make the same joke that's serious. Sitting in the audience, I always start with a plug and say, make sure you all behave yourselves tonight, because amongst the group sitting at one of the tables anonymously, I do have members of the London Met Police who are West Ham fans, and they're here to make sure you guys behave. And we all get a chuckle and we all have a great night because of that. There is no age group limit. All right. So if somebody turned up 32 years old, but has a great passion for the vintage era of West Ham, so say 1958 onwards, anyone who supports that, and a lot of younger fans like my son, who's brought up on my history and what I tell him, they're welcome to come along. There is no age group problem, no age problem. It's £5 on the door. or
Cash
everyone
only,
who comes
or,
through the
or
door
is
gets.
it old
Sorry?
school cash only, or do you accept cards? Because some people don't carry cash anymore, Lou.
Right. Well, fortunately, railway hotel at the bar do cashback.
All right. Okay.
Yeah?
So it's cash, right?
They
Okay.
do.
Got you.
Yeah, they'll do cashback whatever happens. No,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
don't take cards, and we don't sort. That will slow down everything. You can imagine the long list of people that's standing in the restaurant trying to get in. Yeah, because we're in the
Tap
in the
and
big
pay,
event.
Lou. Tap and pay, modern
Yeah.
thing. You just go tap and wireless transaction.
But we're vintage. We're not modern. We're
I
vintage.
know. I'm making a joke.
Old school. Yeah.
Old
Yeah.
school.
So anybody's welcome to come. The raffles, there'll always be. We've got 2 or 3 raffles lined up. I've got Nigel's going to talk about the history of Bubbles, the song. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got another couple of people I'm talking to on the night. But there's all sorts of variations
I'll see if
of
I can
speaker.
turn up. I'll check.
That'd be great.
Surrey boy,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a trek in the Horn Church, but I'll see if I can make the
Elizabeth
trip
line
to
is
come.
amazing.
I know,
Elizabeth
but I'm nowhere
line's
near the
amazing.
Elizabeth line, right? I would have to go to Waterloo, and then I'd have to go
You'll have
somewhere.
to dig a helicopter out, Sean.
Well, probably. I'll get David Sullivan to borrow his chauffeur to drop me off.
That's it. Incidentally, talking to that, I mean, basically, John Ratomsky, who you know, he was on the committee with me.
Yeah.
He was chairman before me. We're great friends. He does a great job on food banks.
Yeah, he does.
Sullivan donated a van for him to deliver the food banks. Good things that the board does that no one ever hears about. John's promised to come and give us a talk about his food banks. I've got all sorts of people lined up. Right till the turn of the year, we've got speakers and all sorts lined up. And there is an ex-West Ham player who's 80, who's promised to come from a very far off place. It's a big surprise. And I'm talking to the family about them coming over for a holiday and coming to speak to us. And that's a very well-known player. I won't mention it at the moment. But certainly Steve Lomas is coming over from Ireland. And when he sorts out a fixture that he's going to attend, he's going to come and speak to my group as well. So.
That's fantastic. Look, Lou, thanks for coming to speak to us. We've been speaking for an hour, and we probably could have spoken for 2 or 3. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Good luck with the group. I'm going to go.
Thank you.
I will come to one.
Yeah.
If it's not the August one, I'll definitely come to one in the future, although Nigel's trying to put me off because we have a love-hate relationship, as people will know on this podcast. But yeah, good luck, Lou. Thanks for being our guest on More Than Just a Podcast.
Yes, we have a Facebook page. We do have a Facebook page.
Oh, modern.
But not a website. You know, it's just put Vintage Hammers in on Facebook and it will come up. Vintage Hammers on Facebook, it'll come up.
All right.
Okay, mate.
Cheers, Lou. All the best, mate.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bobby More Than Just a Podcast. Bobby More Than Just a Podcast.